If you own a business, one of your goals might be to get everyone on your team to do what you would do in every situation, to put the business first, to think like an owner. Unfortunately, there's a couple of significant obstacles to getting your team to think like an owner. And the first one is they're not an owner unless they actually have equity in your business and share in the profits of the business. They're not an owner, and they're not going to do what you would do in every case. They're going to do what's in their self-interest. We all do what's in our self-interest. And what's in their self-interest is what you incentivize them to do, what you reward, what you recognize, and yes, what you pay for. And what's not in their self-interest, what you don't recognize, what you don't reward, and what you don't pay for. For instance, if you have some customer support people on your team and you measure and recognize people that take the most calls in an hour, and maybe you even reward that with compensation, that there's some money tied to the people that hit a certain level of number of customers or the most customers. And yet, what you really want is for people to solve the customer's problems, however long that takes. Well, there's a disconnect between what you're incentivizing them to do and what's really the good for the business. But don't expect people to go, wait a minute, what the business really needs is for me to take as long as it takes to solve this problem. They're going to say, wait, I'm getting paid for, I'm getting incentivized and rewarded for getting on this call and getting off this call and getting on to the next call. And so they're not going to just do what you would necessarily do if you incentivize them to do something else. They're also not going to say, hey, this incentive doesn't seem aligned with the business goals. Somebody should raise their hand and we should reevaluate whether this is the right goal. They're probably not going to do that. They're probably just going to do what you have asked them to do. Which leads us to the second problem with expecting people to think like an owner. And that is this deeply ingrained, heavily conditioned employee mindset. And the employee mindset is substantially around the idea of I get paid for time. I come in, I work, I go home, and I get paid for that time that I'm there. And that's not really how it works. We're not really getting paid for time. We're really getting paid for results. And as soon as you become self-employed, a contractor or a freelancer, or as a business owner for sure, you know nobody's interested in paying for your time. They're only interested in results. And you know when you're paying your team that you expect results for the money you're paying them, but the way the transaction actually works, it feels like you're getting paid for time. So from an employee standpoint, what do? We take our wage or our salary and we divide it by the number of hours we put in to figure out what we're getting paid per hour. And we're thinking like, I need to get this certain hourly rate. And there's a disconnect between the time and the results. As Jim Rohn says, you don't get paid for time, you get paid for the value you put into the time. In other words, the results that you get. So what do you need to do to get people to do what you want them to do and put the business first? Well, you've got to connect the rewards with the results. And so they've got to see that they're not just getting paid for their time, they're getting paid for the results. And if the time leads to results, great. But if they need to put in more time or they need to work harder during the time, then that's what's got to happen. Because you know that you don't just work until the time's up, you work until the job's done and you get the results you're looking for. And that's what your customer or your client is expecting as well. So you need to more clearly connect that if somebody works hard or puts in extra effort, that they're going to get a reward. And that might not have to be that day or that week. It could be a monthly bonus or a quarterly or annual bonus, but something so that they know if I put in more than time and get results, that I'll get rewarded. What you don't want them is feeling like the harder I work, the better the boss does. The more time I put in, the more money for the owner. They've got to see that it doesn't have to be proportionate. Every extra dollar I earn for the company, I get back. But they've got to see that there's a connection, not just to their time, to the money, but for the results, for the money. You can't just walk around saying, think like an owner, and expect people to have their priorities set and their self-interest aligned with the business like it is for you. And you can't just say, think like an owner and think that you're going to overcome this employee mindset that's time for money and it's really results for money. So stop saying, think like an owner. Stop trying to encourage people to think like an owner and start working on your incentives and disconnecting the time for money and get them tied to results.